Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to my weekly real estate vlog. This week I wanted to talk to you about purchasing an investment property. So I've got two kind of categories to go through with the different types of investments. So the first category is buying a property for development. So I've jotted down some points I can quickly run through with you to give you my tips and advice on what to look out for. So the first thing I would really look for is a property with a wide frontage. The wider, the better, essentially, because obviously they're easier to sell if you subdivide and sell vacant blocks with wider frontages, or if you build homes on there, if you can get double garages, then obviously that's much better than a single garage. So I would be looking for something like 17 to 18 meters plus. And if you get something less than that, it just makes the blocks much skinnier, like say 15 meter frontage, you subdivide it down the middle, that's 7.5 meters each, which is really skinny blocks, so harder to sell and obviously less value in terms of the sale price for each block. So look at the frontage. Also look to see if it tapers in at the back, and if it gets too skinny at the back, just be careful of that as well, because obviously when you subdivide it, the backyards are only going to be 5 to 6 meters wide at the back, which is not as appealing. So if you can ideally get rectangular and wider frontage, that's obviously the best. And then if you can't get that, just work out what you can and can't do. The second thing I'd look at is if the block is sloping. So if it's sloping towards the back, just be careful, because obviously you'll need retaining walls, and if you were to build, you'd probably need pumps for the dwellings to pump like stormwater and sewage, whatnot, from the rear of the property up towards the street. So that's a big extra cost when you're looking to develop. Retaining walls are very expensive. So if it's sloping either way significantly, you have to budget that into your feasibility when you're purchasing something. So just be mindful of that. The third thing is a really kind of like, not a secret, but it's something that not many first-time developers, I should say, look at this. So always get a report from your surveyor of where like the SA water and sewer points are on the road. Because if you buy a property and those points on the road are miles away, you actually have to pay to get an extension up to your block so you can then connect your new services to them. So, and that costs a fortune. I think it's between like $500 and $1,000 per meter to extend them. So make sure you call your surveyor, and I can refer you details of a surveyor to get a map of where those locations are. So that's a really important point. The fourth point I wrote down is significant trees. If it's got a significant tree, obviously just look at the location. Also look at where the branches are extending to, because when the council will review it, they'll look at how broad the ranges of the tree and how much land it covers. So that can be very difficult, so just watch out for that as well. And obviously the pretty common thing to look for is easements and caveats on the property. So obviously if there's an easement on a property, that can make a big difference to what you can and can't do. The second type of investment is just a property you're looking to rent out. So just straight away, just chuck a tenant in there, or if it's already rented, that would be even better. So that's just a rental, and I think the best thing to look out for is obviously what rental returns are you getting. Obviously if it's positively geared, that's great. If it's negatively geared, that can also be good, because it reduces your tax liabilities at the end of the financial year. So it's a good tax deduction for you, and it reduces your taxable income to save you tax. So that's good. Look to see if it's ready for rent. So look at the condition of the home. Is there any maintenance that you need to do? We actually find that it's super important to make sure when you're renting a property that it's very clean, tidy, well presented. And if it is, you'll rent it much faster and you'll get a higher rent for it. So it's really important not to kind of skimp on that, and just make sure the property's in as best condition as you can afford to do. If it is tenanted, make sure you ask the real estate agent for like a copy of the tenant's ledger to see that they've been paying when they should be paying, and they haven't fallen into arrears and been served like a Form 2, which is a notice of default for a tenant who's not paying rent or is in breach of their tenancy agreement. So that's very important, because you don't want to take on a property with a tenant who's not very good, because that's going to be a nightmare for you. So that's very important, and I can help you there if need be. Look to see if the property needs any maintenance on there, just kind of like what I mentioned before. If you need a budget for maintenance to be done, make sure you look closely at that. Get building and pest inspections. That's super important, so be mindful of that. And I guess the last point I wrote down was kind of relevant to the taxable income point is depending on, you can look at two different types of investments, the negatively geared one or the positively geared. Most of them in Adelaide are negatively geared, which is good because it reduces your taxable income. But if you can find positively geared, yeah, that's great. Generally, they're in the lower socio kind of economic areas where your prices are less and rents are higher. So your returns are going to be like 5 to 8% kind of gross returns. And usually they're like 3 to 4% roughly. But it really just depends. So I think it's important just to work out what kind of investment you want to buy. And I can certainly guide you in the right direction depending on what your preferences are. If you've got any questions or anything, please let me know. Hopefully you found that helpful. And thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to catching up with you next time. See ya.